The pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. That's my paperwork. All right, first up is open forum. Individuals may address the council about any item not contained on the regular agenda. A maximum of 10 minutes will be allotted for the forum. If the full 10 minutes are not needed, we will continue with the agenda, and if additional time is needed, we'll add it to the end of the agenda. The council will take no official action on items discussed at the forum with the exception of referral to staff or commission. So we have one item, and it's Ruth. I'm gonna not do very well at the last name, but if you want to come up to the podium, share your name and address, please. Name and address, please.
You're doing good.
That's okay.
Okay, I didn't look through the agenda, maybe some of these things are on it. and I
That's okay.
apologize for
Go
that.
ahead.
There's a Main Street crosswalk issue. There's one for sure, maybe two that, there's a sign there, but there's no painting on the street. That is,
Okay.
that, but what I'm talking about is right out here. Over by the event center. And, about cleanup day. I've only seen one ad about it, and that's in the city spring issue. And are there more?
Are we gonna put it on the sign out here? On the electronic sign?
Madam Mayor, council members, it's also on the city's website on the front page.
Okay.
And it's got a full,
Where would you like to see it? Oh, sure. I get it. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
And then the security, I think the security here one. That. In the news, what just happened in. Capitol. That could happen here. Maybe they should. Security here. Also, I was hoping for bike racks. I biked over here.
Oh,
And other.
okay. Yeah, good suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to presentations, which we do not have tonight. And we'll move on to approve agenda. Council members may add items to the agenda for discussion purposes or staff direction only. The council will not normally take official action on items added to the agenda. Does anyone have anything to add tonight?
No.
Right?
Move to approve the agenda as printed.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. We'll move on to consent agenda. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed elsewhere on the agenda. I think we have a couple of things. to remove.
Yeah, I was gonna pull 5.9 and 5.11.
All right, we have 5.9 and 5.11. Do you want to make a motion for the rest of it?
Yeah, motion to approve the consent agenda minus 5.9 and 5.11.
Second?
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. So 5.9,
Cooperative agreements between Elm Creek and City. Dorn, I was just curious what that project was and how the city is involved, if it's led by the Watershed Commission or how that's working.
Madam Mayor, council members, the Fox Creek Stream Bank restorations, phase 2 and 3 our future projects that are programmed in the Elm Creek Watershed's CIP. We will be the lead on those projects. They are just a funder.
Yep.
The third one, that Rogers Downtown Pond Expansion, was actually the, and reuse was actually the stormwater reuse at South Community Park that we were seeking reimbursement for, but then it was discovered that none of these three agreements were approved. The two Fox Creek ones are from 2016 and 2017, and then the third one is from 2023. The watershed has executed all the agreements. We just never brought them before the city council.
Oh, okay.
That's all this is. Okay. Okay. Do I mean a motion?
Sure.
Motion to approve 5.9 cooperative agreements between Elm Creek Watershed Commission and City of Rogers.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, 511.
I was just curious, approval to use park dedication funds for improvement to Rogers High School. I was curious, I don't know, Mike,
Yep.
how that works for city funds on school district property. I was kind of curious if there's anything odd about that or.
Sure. So that is, that area is covered by our joint powers agreement with ISD 728. And if you look at the map, you'll see that I think it's first place and the pitching mound are on city property and third base and the outfield is on school district property. So it is a partnership agreement that we have that allows the school district to make improvements. And in this case, it was brought forward by the Booster Club for several improvements to the field, the bullpens, the batting cages, and they will have community use. That was one of the stipulations from the Park Commission, is to remain open for the community. So it's not just the high school that's going to benefit from this. The older kids that play baseball on those fields will also have access to these.
And all three
Great
groups financially are on board.
Well, the youth group is not part of this. They're putting their donations towards South Community Park and their commitment there as yet. But then they did go out and get some private dollars from TRIA to help sponsor this project.
Okay, very good.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve item 511, approval to use park dedication funds for improvements to Rogers High School baseball facilities.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. We will move on to public hearings. 6.1, public hearing to consider adopting the following ordinance and resolution. These are related to our master fee schedules.
All right.
Bridget?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I will introduce this topic. As part of our annual budgeting process, we always amend our fee schedule. And when we looked at it during the 2026 budgeting process, we had just approved a utility rate study. So at the time we approved the other changes to the rates, we held off on approving any changes or increases to our utility billing rates or our development or access fees for utilities until we had a utility complete and a recommendation. So we'll start out the presentation tonight with AE2S, and we have John Eaton here with AE2S, and he will perform a presentation on the overview of the results of the utility rate study. We did have two separate work sessions regarding this, one discussing the utility rates, and then before tonight's meeting, we looked at the impact fees, which are those access fees for development and building permits. So with that, I will turn it over to John to present the results of the study.
Thanks, Bridget. I'm John Eaton with AE2S, and tonight I'll be presenting the final results of the utility rate study. So our agenda that we're going to move through here during the presentation is we'll talk a little bit about scope and objectives. We'll talk about how the rate study, the methodology behind it that we use. Then we'll get specifically to the sewer rate portion, then the water rates, then the stormwater rates, and the impact fees, and then open for any questions at the end. So the study objectives, they're all listed, the 6 here on the slides. to develop a rate plan to meet revenue requirements for each utility, cost of service basis for rate setting. We evaluated conservation-based water rate alternatives and restructure of the stormwater fee structures, and evaluate and update impact fees, and then develop a 6-year plan for each utility. So the rate study approach and methodology, we take revenue requirements. So we look at what the total revenue needs are to meet the operation, capital, any kind of debt that you have, and financial performance criteria. In one case, we did a cost of service analysis on the water side. So that was looking at what groups are paying what percentage of the revenue coming in, making sure that it's equitable. Once we have that base information, we can create a rate design and talk it over with staff, discuss it. So we design rates to recover revenue requirements from respective user classes, considering simplicity, conservation signals, and cost of service. So especially on the simplicity, we try and make it easy to present and understand, whether you have a big utility background or you're just from the public. We're trying to make it nice and simple for everybody to understand. The last portion is revenue adequacy. So we take the rate and we project it into the future, and we do rate forecasting again to try and make sure that we're meeting all the revenue requirements in the near term for 6 years out. So now we'll move specifically to the sewer. So our study overview for the rates, we evaluated the existing rate structure that the city has and the revenue recovery approach. We developed a rate structure, recommendations to improve long-term revenue stability and align with cost systems that you already have in the city. We evaluated long-term rate projections, again, to support operations and maintenance, capital reinvestment, and long-term financial sustainability of the sewer utility. This is your existing rate structure that you have in place. It's based on a monthly fixed charge and a volumetric or a flow-based rate. So residential sewer charges, they're based on a winter average use. So we look at the usage during the winter months and determine that as the base months. And they're typically from November to February. Commercial and industrial are charged based on the meter water usage that they have. So existing structure does rely heavily on volumetric charges to recover system costs. There's limited recovery through fixed charges. The challenge with that is as demand goes up and down, if you have a very wet year and you do not use much water, the city can be put in a financial bind of not having enough money. The flip side of it is when you have a very dry year and you're using a lot of water, that can drive revenue. So it's kind of like a feast or famine. And sometimes it can be quite the challenge financially to balance out. So after reviewing it, the rate structure recommendation, we're proposing to increase fixed charges to correct the structural imbalance. And the fixed charge is meant to cover labor, operation and maintenance costs, and capital equipment purchases. So that fee is meant to cover those costs. That will reduce the volumetric charge to offset the increase in the fixed fee charge. So the net, we're trying to get as close to zero as we can on the fee change. The revenues are fully supported in the operating and capital reserve needs at this time. So what you're seeing in the 2025 column is the existing fee structure and what it would be. And in 2026 is the transition to the new fee structure. So you can see the fixed fee is going up and you see the volumetric fee going down. Again, the goal was to have a revenue neutral change in the fee structure. So this would be the billing impact to the public. Low use residential rates will see a marginal increase. from roughly $24 to roughly $25. The average residential usage and higher usages like commercial industrial will be seeing a decline in their average monthly bill. So the rate projection, again, 2025, as I understood it, we were originally looking at a 6% increase. That's what was already planned. So there will be a roughly 61% change in the fixed fee, but the volumetric charge goes down by 10%. Again, not to ignore the numbers, but it's a revenue neutral thing. One's balancing the other one out. So, and then you're looking into the future for the next 5 year, you're looking at roughly a 3% increase per year in both the fixed and volumetric charges. So the rate plan maintains affordability for low cost users. And the scenario uses conservative growth assumptions to again balance out. And the assumptions are that trunk fees would essentially go down to 0 by 2035 as you build out further. So that's the assumptions that we use in the plan. Looking at a comparison, the regional rate comparison, where you are, you're probably in the 75th percentile at this point, and you'll actually see a reduction. You're going to reduce your average from about 53.30 down to about 47.30. So you'll be moving down away from the top of the scale, making sure I say that correctly. Moving to water. Again, when we evaluated the existing rate structure that you have. We conducted a cost of service analysis that I'll talk about next. And that was to assess equity among customer classes. Based on that, we developed a rate structure recommendation, including a phased approach to fixed charge adjustments. Again, the fixed charge being adjusted to cover the O&M and capital equipment costs. And then we're also trying to correct the cost of service over time, minimizing near-term customer impacts. And again, we looked out long-term rate projections to make sure that we were supporting revenue, capital reinvestment, and long-term financial sustainability of the water utility. So the water cost of service analysis takes all of your budgets, including the capital improvement budget, and we have to first functionalize it. So essentially we break it into its categories of what's customer oriented, what's treatment fixed costs. These are costs that are very repeatable. Then you have variable costs. These are basically driven by demand. What's in a transmission, pushing the water out in the transmission line, distribution, and then storage. From there, you classify that into customer commodity and capacity, and then we move it again to the allocation group. So that helps us take the budget costs and then helps us assign who's paying for what of the four groups: residential, commercial, industrial, and irrigation. So these were the results that we had. Where the revenue comes from, that's in the second column, and we were using 2024 data as the test data year. So you can see the costs that it came in, the percent revenue that it had for each area. Then we looked at the actual expense column, again, same test year, and you could see what percent it was. We're looking for a difference between the two of between plus minus 5 and 10%. So if you're in there, it's considered to be equitable. And what we're seeing is that commercial and non-taxable commercial is actually subsidizing part of the residential rate. So residential is a little bit low, and then commercial and industrial are filling in that gap. So the goal is to try and balance that back out over time. So with your existing rate structure, again, fixed rate structure on the water side is based on meter size. And the idea is the larger the meter, the more flow it can have through it, so the more capacity it can take from the system. Then on the volumetric side, you have 4 tiers for your residential rate, and the commercial and non-taxable commercial have 2, and the irrigation has a single rate at a higher rate. So revenue recovery really relies heavily on the volumetric charge rather than the fixed charge, similar to the sewer charge. So this is the rate structure recommendation. Again, using the changes based on your current. So this can be kind of a little confusing to look at, but again, 2025 is existing, 2026, 7, and 8 are the future. So you'll see on the volumetric side, things are just staying the same. On the fixed charge, they are going up, again, to balance out the O&M and the capital equipment costs. Specific to the cost of service analysis, you can see in the test year and in 2025, the differences that are there. And again, fixed revenue is about 31% of the total revenue by 2028 as we transition. And again, this is roughly a 5-year transition. And you'll see by 2030 that we're close to falling within the 10% margin that we have. Residential has come up, commercial and non-taxable is back down. They're still at kind of the ends of the scale, but it is more balanced. So we're proposing that it's a nice slow transition over time. Billing impacts, the low volume residential rate will probably see the most significant change, but on a monetary basis, you're talking a couple of dollars. The average residential user will see an increase, as will the higher users. From a comparison with your neighbors in the Twin Cities, you'll see a rate increase from about $25.01 to about $27.51, moving you up, looks like about 5 or 6. So it puts you more in the middle of the category for the Twin Cities.
Hey,
Storm?
Can I interrupt you for 1 minute? Can
Sure.
you explain the change in the thresholds for the rates, how we went from 15, the tiers? We
Oh.
went down slightly, and explain how you guys arrived at that. I think we went from, if you go back one more. Tier 2 now cuts off at 11,000 instead of 15.
Right. So, yeah, we lowered the tier rate. Again, tier 1, we're trying to make sure that we keep it as equitable as possible for the low volume user. So the thought behind that is that this is base use of water. This is a very basic use of water that somebody would have. You're just providing for daily function. As you get into tier 2, that was more the normalized usage. That's what the average family person groups would use. And when you lower that adjustment down, again, what you're trying to do is balance the tier and then also encourage conservation, because we heard clearly from staff and from the city that conservation was important for you. So that's why that was lowered. The other tiers, as you went up, obviously you're paying more money, and the irrigation is the highest rate. For those people that want to irrigate, you're going to end up paying the most to irrigate. And that is a bigger impact on the city. Having the capacity in the system to meet those peak demand days can be a challenge. By raising that and promoting conservation, you're helping to better control your systems and control costs. Does that cover it? Yep. Any other questions while I'm at this point? All right. Stormwater. So similar to the other two, we evaluated the potential adjustments to the existing rate structure. We did develop a simplified rate structure recommendation that you'll see. And like the other two, we did evaluate the long-term rate projection to make sure that it's supporting the ongoing operations, capital reinvestment, and long-term financial sustainability of the water or the stormwater utility. So this is your existing rate structure today. It's a relatively common rate structure that's out there. And what we're recommending is that the city maintain a similar basis to it, which is really the finance end of it, but to try and simplify the structure. It can be kind of confusing to look at. So where we're promoting, or what we're proposing that they do, is we're going to consolidate 11 categories down into 2 clear categories. So either you're residential or you're not. And so it makes it very easy. On the residential, it's $6 per month. Non-residential is based on acreage that you have and impervious acres. So the idea is, if you pave a large area and you get a larger runoff, that's a bigger impact that the city tends to have to take care of. So the more impervious area, the more that you pay. The less that you have, the less that you pay. Again, nice simplified fee structure. So when we look at rate projections, we're looking at roughly a 4% increase annually. And you can see what that effect would be on the residential and the non-residential gross and impervious area. Rate comparison on the storm side, you're on the lower end of the scale. This will really only shift you maybe up to about a third from the bottom of the scale. So you're still on the lower end. It's going to go from about $6 to about $7.30. Again, by 2031, it's again, a multi-year transition. Lastly, we'll talk about impact fees. So impact fees are one-time charges generally applied to new or expanded development. The purpose of an impact fee is to recover some of the cost that the city and the public had to pay to build the capacity of the system. So you build capacity, you want to make sure you're not operating at the margin. In case you go over the margin, you don't want somebody to be starved of water. So the idea behind it is growth pays for growth. So we want to recover the proportionate share. So we have existing system capacity, like I said, and it must meet what they consider to be the rational nexus requirements. These are legal requirements that were established out in the western part of the United States. There must be a clear connection to growth. There has to be a demonstrable benefit, and it must be proportionate to the demand placed on the system. So in Rogers, impact fees are currently, you have them, what you call them now are trunk fees, and that's in the water, sanitary, and storm. And those will become, or what we'll term development fees. They usually always happen at the time of development. Then the next set is access charges. For people that are familiar in development, they're typically called WAC and SAC charges. It stands for water access charge or sanitary access charge. So you'll hear those terms thrown around a lot. Again, we're trying to simplify it. One portion's at development, and the second portion is at the building permit. Again, growth areas are supported, or the impact fees come from the growth areas that you have. So they're supported by new growth. And you can see on the map, this is the future projection of some growth. So as development builds these areas, fee revenue will come in. As you develop out, this revenue will naturally decline as you have less and less areas to develop. So again, it's trying to recover the capacity that you build into your system. And we did look at long-term financial stability and make sure that we have sustainable rates to participate in capital planning and improvement. So here's your current fee schedule as it stands. There was one structural fee issue that we identified on the sanitary side for commercial industrial. The first unit is about $4,500. $2,500 of that goes to the Met Council. That's a pass-through. So the city is really only recovering about $2,000 on the first unit. Everything after that, the city is not really recovering any money. So the structural change is that the proposed fees would be for all units that somebody has, because the city has already paid for that capacity, and what you're trying to do is recover it. So not just on the first unit. If you do that, then the public is supporting it more. And again, the idea is growth pays for growth. So when we look at maximum justifiable fees, we had to do a calculation that looked at what your existing system value is. That's what we're calling the existing system buy-in. How much have you spent to date? And then we bring it all to current year dollars. And then we look at your CIP and we take all of that into account, because that's pretty well documented future investment that you're going to have in the system. When you pull all those together, you are able to obtain a maximum justifiable fee. So on water, sewer, and storm, you'll see for a single family, the impact fee, the existing fees that you have are in the center. That's that $4,400, $5,000, $20, and $60. And the maximum justifiable fee is in the right-hand column. Again, that is just the maximum justifiable fee. That is not the fee that we're recommending or proposing that you go to, but it's a legally defensible fee that you could go to if you want. Here's the proposed fee structure. Again, simplifying it for both water and sanitary and storm. The development fee, that would happen at the time of development. And then the building permit fee for water and sanitary would happen at the time of building permit. So what they're proposing, or what we're proposing, is an access fee total for water of $5,300 per SAC unit. And when you look at this, just to be clear, the development and building permit costs added together adds up to the total. It's not all three together. It's the bottom two is how it's split. And so the split comes as part of an equation. You're recovering 40% of the fee at the development portion of it and 60% at the building permit portion of it. And that helps the city bring in funds to help develop any and pay for any capacity additions that you would do for that development and future development. So for a single family home, again, the assumptions are on the left-hand side. The current fee that a single family home would pay for impact fees is about $10,000. And with the changes, it would go up to about $18,700. And that $18,000 is after a 4-year transition. So again, we're suggesting slow incremental changes. What I wanted to do was make sure that I display the full term cost when we came up with the proposal. All of the other costs of the neighboring cities are the current year costs. Those are the 2026. So we in fact, I know for sure one of the cities is going to be upping their fee significantly. And we're only estimating that fee increases from the other cities would follow what you would typically see around the area. Any questions?
No, I mean, we went through it during the workshop pretty thoroughly, so my questions were answered there, but thank you. Thanks for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Madam Mayor and Council, I will make another couple notes here. I do want to thank John and AHUS staff has been working with them since about August, September to complete this study. So a lot of work and effort has gone into it, and I think we have a really good result here. So tonight we as part of the utility rate study, we have updated the fee schedule. So that is what the public hearing is on. The rates changed in the fee schedule were the utility billing rates and the impact fees. As John noted, there was one additional change for a small administrative fee on construction meters. But other than that, those would be the only changes we're seeing in that fee schedule as of now. In addition, the ordinance does specify that the rates will become effective on May 1st. So for utility billing, it would be May 1st usage date, which would be in the June utility bills. We would see an increase. So we'll get something on the internet. We'll get something on the utility bills noting that residents can expect that increase. In addition, when we look at the impact fees, we have some developments that are already in the pipeline. So the ordinance specifies that developments that have applied or done their planning applications prior to May 1st will have fees that were in effect at the time that they did the planning application, not necessarily the new fees. So the new fees would apply to future planning applications. So with that, if there aren't any other questions, I would recommend opening it for a public hearing.
Right. All right, I'll make a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that motion passes. Would anyone like to speak to this item? Name and address, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors. I'm Mark Johnson, 25300 Tucker Road. My property is an agricultural property enrolled in the Ag Preserve Program. I have challenged, so I'm not concerned about the water or sewer. I'm concerned about the stormwater fees, which I challenged all the way back to 2020. Finally, in 2022, I got the city to agree to rescind those fees from our properties. My only question is, are we going to remain exempt or are you going to change that? And if it's going to remain exempt, I'll sit down and be quiet.
Madam Mayor and Council, so with the simplification of the utility rates, previously we were doing it based upon land use. And there was a slight loophole that agricultural properties it was a gray area. So to clarify, we refunded the money to Mr. Johnson and I believe some other ag properties with the caveat that we would be looking into this in the future. Because as we discussed with AE2S, agricultural properties are one of the main contributors to stormwater runoff and chemicals in the system. So we did intentionally seek to include them. So an agricultural property with a residential building on it would be subject to the $6 monthly fee.
Yeah. Challenge your statement that the agricultural properties are a significant contributor to the storm. My property hasn't changed in 33 years. I'm the third owner of that farm in 120 some years. The water on my property hasn't changed. It stays on my property. So I have no, not even perceived benefit, but real benefit from the stormwater fee. And you know, I challenged that way back to 2020. In 2022, I finally enlisted my attorney, and that's what it took to get the city to keep things clear, I guess.
Yeah.
So again, I don't, if you can demonstrate a benefit to my property, okay, I'll maybe be in agreement, but I see no benefit. As a matter of fact, as the development comes closer, we're seeing more and more runoff onto our property. And I can demonstrate that with a big 10-acre open water pond on my property that since the development of Serenity Estates, that the water level in that pond does not go down like it used to. It's always at a higher level. So I would say that my property is being impacted more by stormwater than any benefit I would perceive to be.
What is the process typically for, I mean, this has been a workaround for a long time, so is there some kind of a process we discuss, or what are we doing here?
Madam Mayor, council members, I'd be glad to meet with Mr. Johnson and we can talk through this. And if there is a different outcome, we'd certainly come back to the city council with that outcome.
Okay,
I would add, I believe that back in, it was 2022, maybe you said that, I believe when we looked at that, I think there were 6 or 8 properties in town that were in that. It was a small number, under 10. I think it was 6 or 8 properties. And that had to do again with the land use and the zoning piece. We talked about at that time, at finding that loophole that Mr. Johnson, his attorney, pointed out, finding that, we talked about it at that time, changing the way we were, billing at that time, so it wasn't based on, and then we decided to wait until we did a full utility rate study and come up with it with a more comprehensive piece, but it really was, 6 or 8 total properties across the city.
well, it makes sense that if there's 6 or 8 that are currently experiencing a loophole, that we contact them if it's changing.
And that's, we contacted Mr. Johnson, letting know that,
Yeah.
because we committed to that. a few
Got it.
years ago to
Okay.
make sure that
Back
he
in
knew.
2020, and I
Yep.
appreciate that.
Okay,
Otherwise, I wouldn't have known.
Wanted to follow through on that. We had that on a tickler
Gotcha.
file to make sure that.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
I've got 28 acres that's not agricultural, but I've got a huge tremendous swamp. Stores any kind of water, extra water. Am I supposed to be charged for water running down my hill to my swamp? I charged for having 28 acres? No problem with water on my property, on my main property. As I have a reservoir that's fairly large. There's all water. The extra. Couldn't be any extra charges for my property, because there's no extra water other than in the swamp.
Jordan?
Madam Mayor, council members, Mr. Kelly would receive the residential charge. It is not exactly true that all water stays on Mr. Kelly's property. The stormwater utility pays for the stormwater system throughout the entire city because there are different drainage divides, different storm sewer systems, different streams and creeks, different lakes that all the water runs to and ultimately makes it to the river.
Am I supposed to be charged because I've got 28 acres and with no water problems?
Madam Mayor, council members, Mr. Kelly would charge the residential charge.
I would point out too that, I mean, there is a stormwater system in the roadway, the Kelly Lane roadway, that was actually a pretty significant issue when we were reconstructing that property or that roadway a few years ago. There were a lot of challenges with stormwater in that area with the height of outlets and
I guess you know
storm
more
scepters.
about it.
Lots of issues in engineering that system to be able.
Downhill. Stay on a hill, where most of my property is on a hill. Even the people down Kelly Lane, they live on a hill. Water goes to the swamp.
Yeah, we had significant issues with many phone calls from the folks slipping up and down that street with water bird bathing in their driveways and trying to get the outlets and the inlet levels of that system fixed. The long and short of it is there is a stormwater system running down that roadway.
Never had a call from me about water on my property.
Nope.
You're gonna charge me for having water on my so-called property?
Correct.
Makes a lot of sense.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? Go ahead.
Jim Kimmett Miller. 105 territorial. Farm is 65 territorial road. Bank is there too. And we pay these fees, the want to pay them. I maintain the ditch myself. And all that. Developments, more water and pressure, everything back to us. They say the runoff. Well, give me a field with a open ground, the water's gonna go in. It ain't gonna run off. And then they say the farmer, I seed the stuff in the hay. I'm one of the few that does. That's 4-year rotation that builds the soil back up. Another ones don't, or whatever. I think you got more problems with your developments, other stuff. I don't wanna see a charge either. That's why I signed up for Ag Reserve. My dad did, and I ain't going out of it. So you come with the sewer and water and stuff, and go across maybe, but you can't condemn it. So I would like you to look into this and stuff. I don't think I should be forced out of it. I lived here all my life. I'm 61 years old. My dad's 83. You're taking the enjoyment out of our livelihood, everything else.
Would anyone else like to speak to this item? One more time, would anyone else like to speak to this item? All right, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Great. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we have 2 items then to vote on. One is amending the master fee schedule. And then the second, oh, I guess we'll talk about the first one first.
So do we want to discuss like egg preserve and those few properties if they, how the fee should be for those, if we're going to be okay with just going forward and having them charged, or do we want that looked into further, or?
Madam Mayor, can I ask Mr. Dorn a question?
Yeah.
Mr. Dorn, this agricultural land that we're talking about, is it more affected by developments alongside of it? Or is it affected by the practice of the land itself?
Madam Mayor, council members, that's a good question. I did a simple Google search of the water resources biggest polluter, and it comes up invariably agricultural is the biggest polluter. A lot of these systems, even the ag land, for example, properties west of Willendale Drive, drain under Willendale Drive into Cowley Lake, into a storm sewer system that goes down, dumps into Fox Creek. Fox Creek then dumps down into the river. The city council approved 2 cooperative agreements earlier this evening for stream bank repairs on Fox Creek. So that's what the water resources stormwater fee goes towards, is improvements like that. Everybody's contributing to it. It's not just the development. It's not just mining. It's the ag land. It's the development. It's all of it. And so that's why we're proposing that the fee be paid by all. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but hopefully it did.
Basically, what you just said was drainage from some of these farmlands is no different than any water coming off of a subdivision because it flows through the system.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, did you have concerns about that? What are your thoughts?
I don't have concerns about that, I guess. If you're looking at it as a full system, and I understand that you don't want to pay a fee, but you've gotten the relief from it previously, but from a system as a whole, I think you have to look at it from that viewpoint.
I just think it's a nature of the beast as we develop further, encroach on each other. These systems have to come together.
I do want to ask a question though about the comments as far as the change in flow or increase in flow due to development around. There is a process for like inquiring about that, correct?
Madam Mayor, council members, every development that occurs in the city of Rogers is reviewed by the Elm Creek Watershed Management Commission, and it has to follow their rules. The development cannot generate more water in the before or in the after than in the before, and it can't be at a higher rate. So all developers have to demonstrate that through a stormwater study.
And if a neighboring property like disagrees, they think something's changed, how can they like reach out to see if that's true?
Certainly, they can contact us in Public Works and we can walk through it and visit the site if we need to and make a determination.
Okay, thank you.
Bottom line is that's why they put all the stormwater ponds or retention ponds and flow ponds in to correct those issues, correct?
Correct.
Anything else? I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2026-8, amending the 2026 master fee schedule.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?